My name is Maya. I'm 29 and last Saturday, I married the one person I wanted to spend my life with. The plan had been simple. Our wedding day would be warm, quick with laughter, and full of moments that turn into memory. That's what everyone told me anyway. They said the day would blur past, a bright flash of love, and that I should hold tight to it. For the most part, the day was beautiful, but there was a hollow ache under the flowers, under the music that didn't go away. Every time I looked where certain people should have been, my chest tightened. For months, I had been careful about dates, invitations, and tiny details. I sent my wedding date to my family 8 months ahead. I planned travel advice. I made lists. I trusted that they'd show up. But the seats that were reserved for them, they stayed empty. No one from my family came. Not my mother, Karen, not my father, Thomas, not my sister, Sophie, and not even my best friend since childhood, Nina. Nina had been like a sister to me. She cried with me through bad breakups and celebrated small wins. She was supposed to stand beside me as my maid of honor. Instead, they all went to Sophie's engagement party. Sophie had known my wedding date for months. She had time to plan around it. But 2 months before my wedding, her engagement party invitations went out. Gold foil, fancy script, photos of the two of them kissing on a rooftop, the kind of invitation made to catch attention. Karen and Thomas, my parents, were suddenly very busy. When I sent my invitations, the replies were short. My mother sent a week. "We'll try, dear." My father's only reply was a thumbs-up emoji. 3 days later. I tried to tell myself not to read too much into it, but I'd seen this pattern before. Sophie had always been the favored child. It had been like that since we were little. Sophie got the bigger bedroom, Sophie got the car at 16, Sophie got the looks and applause. I had always been the quieter one. I had learned to live in the shadow. But somehow I thought my wedding would be different. 2 weeks before the wedding, I called my mother to double-check travel plans. She paused on the line as if choosing words carefully. Then she said, "Maya, Sophie's engagement party is the same day as your wedding. It will be hard for us to attend both." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She told me Sophie's in-laws from Europe were flying in, and that it was a rare chance for everyone to be together. She said it like that should explain everything. "You'll understand when you have kids, Maya," she said. "You can't be in 2 places at once." I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking. I tried not to ruin my fiancé Aaron's excitement, so I didn't tell him right away. I didn't want our joy to be clouded. But in the days that followed, family texts and calls came with the same quiet refusal. "We can't be there." The sting was worse when the refusals were personal. Nina, my best friend, called the night before the wedding. "I'm so sorry, Maya," she said. "But Sophie's party is a big deal. I can't miss it." I had imagined Nina standing by me, helping with the vows, steadying me if I trembled. Instead, she was saving her excuse for another family. On the day itself, I walked down the aisle, smiling as best I could, holding Aaron's hand, telling myself that love was enough. Aaron was handsome, steady like a picture. Our friends filled the room. For moments, I forgot the hurt. But every time I glanced at the empty row of chairs, the ache returned, sharp and real. During the reception, as we cut the cake, my phone lit up. The screen filled with calls and texts. My mother was calling over and over. My phone showed 52 missed calls in less than an hour. I stared at the screen, the knife in my hand, while music and laughter blurred around me. Aaron noticed my face and whispered, "What's wrong?" I couldn't answer. That's when a text from my cousin Claire showed up. Claire was the one in the family who had sometimes told me the uncomfortable truth. Her message was short, urgent. "Call me, Maya. Don't say I told you." In that second, my heart sank. I felt like I was falling into a hole. I walked outside and called Claire. She answered on the first ring, voice low. "They are talking about you," she said like she was hiding. "They say you planned the wedding to compete with Sophie." I froze. "That's not true," I said. I had set my date months before Sophie even got engaged. But Claire said my family was spinning the story, so it sounded like I was trying to upstage Sophie. "Your dad told her fiancé's family that you're not close to everyone anymore," Claire said. "So it makes sense," he said, "that they didn't come." I felt my mouth go dry. They were rewriting the story right now, as if they could make the truth smaller with their words. Claire helped me piece together more. Nina was telling people at Sophie's party that she hadn't been able to be my maid of honor because I was difficult about the guest list. My own best friend saying things that made me look bad. Then Claire added, "Mom's calling you because she needs you to fix something tonight. She says it's urgent." The idea that they had skipped my wedding to go to Sophie's party, and that now they wanted me to do favors for them from my reception, it felt like a slap. I did what I had always done, swallow and let it go. I wanted to walk back in and pretend I hadn't heard, but the anger got sharper. That night, I didn't tell Aaron everything. I didn't want his joy taken away. But I started to see how this family operated. Hurt, then guilt, then requests. Back in the hotel room that night, my phone still buzzing, I finally opened a text from Claire. It was a photo. In it, Sophie stood at her engagement party, wearing a necklace that had been promised to me years ago, my grandmother's wedding necklace. My grandmother, Eleanor, had pulled me close when I was 19 and given it to me in words. "This is for the man you marry. I want you to wear it on your wedding day." She even had it in her will. 4 years it had been in Mom's safe. When I asked, Mom told me the necklace was damaged and best not used. Now there it was around Sophie's neck, shining. Nina smiled next to her, glass raised. I could not breathe. Aaron saw my face and took the phone. "That's the necklace?" he asked. I nodded. When I played my mom's voicemail, she said casually, "Oh, we gave Eleanor's necklace to Sophie so she could wear something meaningful tonight. She asked me to call back immediately because the caterer had overbooked, and they needed me to call a restaurant favor." It was the moment something inside me broke. It wasn't only that they had been absent at my wedding, it was that they took something so private, something promised to me, and handed it to Sophie like it was nothing. That kind of betrayal felt deliberate. That night I didn't cry. I sat in silence, but the silence was changing. In the morning, sunlight felt muted. There were 93 missed calls and many voicemails. The messages weren't apologies, they were orders. "Call your sister. Do the right thing." My father's voicemail told me I was being childish, that I should be mature now that I was married. "Call your mother back and do the right thing," he said. I had always given myself to smoothing things over, to being the family peacemaker. But after years of being the second choice, I realized something had shifted. The hurt turned into a cold, precise thought. I would stop being the family's punching bag. I began saving every piece of evidence, texts, photos, voicemails, into a folder labeled simply, "For later." That afternoon, I opened a scanned copy of my grandmother's will, which I had kept. The will clearly stated the necklace was to go to me, Maya Harper, to be worn on my wedding day. Suddenly, this was no longer just a moral wrong. It would be a legal problem. But I didn't call them or lash out. I had learned to play smarter. I put on a smile, I posted one wedding photo, and I kept my head down. The plot that had been their story would not get a fresh version from me. I started moving in the background quietly, and I planned. After the wedding, instead of falling apart, I rebuilt. I threw myself into work and I changed how I showed up. I had been a mid-level project manager at a marketing firm, good but quiet. I stayed later, took on projects no one wanted, and within months I landed a big client who boosted our department revenue by nearly 40%. The CEO publicly thanked me and I was promoted to director. With the promotion, my salary rose and I started investing like I had always wanted to. In months, not years, my passive investments began to add up. I bought 3 rental properties in good neighborhoods. The extra income made a real difference. Aaron and I bought a house by the river, modern and bright, with a home office where I could work and think in private. My social circle changed. I stopped inviting the constant family drama into my life, and more genuine people filled the space. We hosted dinners, weekend trips, charity nights. People who met us saw a couple built on mutual respect, not the old family script. Amelia, no Claire, stayed in touch quietly. She slipped me small updates, like when Sophie's wedding plans started to fall apart, or when my parents complained about how distant I'd become. I didn't respond to their public jabs. I let silence be my answer. I kept storing proof. Every message, every photo, every voicemail, like building blocks for a future moment. One afternoon, almost a year later, I got an email from Claire with attachments. Scanned inventory from grandmother Eleanor's estate. The necklace was listed, with my name as the inheritor. Even more, there was a small note. Released to Sophie Harper for temporary use June 15th, to be returned to rightful owner. The date of the release was the same evening as Sophie's engagement party. The paper signed by Mom said it was temporary, but the necklace had never come back. That week, in a casual coffee meeting, An event planner I was working with said she was planning a massive wedding for a client named Sophie Harper at a high-end estate. My mind stopped. Sophie's wedding, big, flashy, would be exactly where the family would gather. The planner spoke excitedly about guests, photographers, press. Without telling her why, I began connecting more to the right circles. Journalists who write about society weddings, event suppliers, the estate's owner. I did not say Sophie was my sister. I kept my head down and worked quietly to be in the places where influence lived. I hired a lawyer, Marcus, discreet and efficient. He read the will and the signed release and agreed I had a strong claim. There would be legal steps we could take to recover the necklace, possibly even claim damages for withholding property. But Marcus advised patience. Public timing mattered. If I moved too fast, the story could be spun against me. I had to set a stage where facts, not emotions, did the talking. Around 3 months later, Claire called in a whisper. "Mom's bragging that she's saving the necklace for Sophie's wedding," she said. "She says you don't care about family traditions anymore." The stage was set. The date was locked. I felt a steady, quiet resolve. The day of Sophie's wedding came with perfect light. I was not invited, but I didn't need an invitation. My lawyer had a plan. He sent an official demand letter to the venue, the planner, and Sophie herself, asking for the immediate return of the necklace, and he included the will's clause and the signed release. The notice said hosting an event with disputed property could open the venue to liability. The letter arrived just before photos and guests began arriving. At the exact time Marcus said it would, the venue manager held the envelope, read the legal language, and his face changed. The event planner pulled Sophie aside. Panic spread behind the scenes. Meanwhile, I had quietly tipped a lifestyle journalist who liked a dramatic, truth-telling piece. I didn't lie. I gave facts. My name on the will, the signed release for temporary use. The journalist said she would look into it. At 3:17 p.m., Marcus called me. "It's done," he said. Claire texted me from inside the bridesmaid's room. The planner confronted Mom, and Sophie's hair blew in the room as someone tried to take the necklace off. A hairbrush went flying when Sophie lost it. Nina tried to calm things, but it was messy. I sat at home, reading the messages, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The necklace belonged with me. The next morning, the article hit. It didn't paint me as a villain. It simply presented facts, the will, the signed release, and how the necklace was being returned to its rightful heir. Social media had pictures of Sophie without her signature jewelry, and comments that raised uncomfortable questions. The fallout was quick. My parents' social circle, the same people who had admired them for years, started to treat them differently. Sophie's in-laws were angry that their daughter's wedding had been publicly wounded by family drama. Nina's friends cut ties with her when it became clear she hadn't been honest about the story. I never gossiped, I never celebrated loudly. I simply let the truth stand. After that, I cut contact with my parents. They had chosen the day to skip me, and they had made the choice to hand me the role of problem solver but not the role of daughter they had promised. I wasn't interested in arguing. I had what I needed, the necklace, the truth in the open, and my life. Aaron and I celebrated quietly. A year later, on our anniversary, I wore grandmother Eleanor's necklace for the first time in peace. The weight of it felt right. It was in the place it should have been. Aaron squeezed my hand and said, "Feels like it's home now." And I didn't need to explain anything more. After the necklace was returned, life continued, but differently. I had momentum in my career, and a certain calm in my home. I stopped expecting approval from people who had shown me they were unable to give it. I focused on building our life. Aaron and I hosted events that brought people together for good causes. We helped friends in business, and I continued to expand my investments. There was satisfaction in finally steering my own path. It surprised me to find that the pain I'd carried for so long could be a fuel for change. Claire remained my quiet ally. She would slip simple updates sometimes. A note about how Sophie's wedding plans had more problems, or how my parents' public relationships were strained. She didn't ask for anything. Her help came from remorse and from seeing things differently. I never pushed her to choose sides. The distance between my parents and me was not revenge. It was protection. For years I had bent around their needs and rules. Now I was protecting myself from a cycle that left me empty. It wasn't all dramatic fallouts though. Some people I loved tried to come back. Nina reached out once months after the article. She sent a long text that tried to explain her choices. She said she had felt pressured to side with the family. She said she had been scared of losing what she had. I read the message slowly. I remembered our childhood, the sleepovers, the secrets traded late at night. But her words felt small next to what she had done. She had chosen to be on the stage where I was absent. I didn't respond immediately. Later, at a networking event, we crossed paths. Her eyes slid away. I didn't chase her. The silence was a response. Meanwhile, the attention from the magazine piece opened doors. People started to ask me to speak about financial independence, about how women could build passive income. I gave talks, I mentored younger colleagues, and I used my platform to help people who had been ignored at home. That felt like a higher purpose. Money meant I could be free from needing family approval. It also meant I could help others find the same freedom. But even with success, some nights the old ache returned. On quiet evenings, I would sometimes open the folder labeled "For Later" and read voicemails again. The messages weren't only annoying. They were a record of a life I had been expected to accept. I would also look at the photo of Sophie wearing the necklace at her engagement, and I would feel that old sting. Yet the sting slowly dulled. Time and change turned it into a memory shaped more by lessons than by pain. One day, Claire called with something that surprised me. "Mom is asking for a meeting," she said. "She says she wants us to talk." I thought about answering, about rekindling a conversation. But why would I reopen an old wound? I remembered the day they left, the emptiness of that reception, the way they then telephoned me as if nothing had happened. I decided not to meet. Closure, I realized, did not mean inviting them back into my life. It meant living a life that did not depend on their approval. At a charity dinner, I stood by a table of young women asking for advice on starting their own savings, their own investments. A woman in the group asked, "Was it hard to walk away?" I paused. "Yes," I said. But what was harder was staying where I was treated like I didn't matter. The room was full of nods. Their eyes told me I had made the right choice. That kind of validation from people building honest lives felt better than any family praise ever had. Months later, I ran into Sophie at an art opening. She was polite, tight-lipped, and well-dressed. She didn't have the necklace on. She tried to apologize for the wedding mess, blaming stress and family pressure. I listened without anger. "I wish things had been different," I said. "I wish you could have been there for me." She looked away. I went home knowing I had said what needed to be said. I didn't need her apology to move on. My life had its own brightness now. As the years went by, Aaron and I grew closer. We argued like any couple, we saved for repairs and plans, we dreamed about travel. Once we sat on our porch watching boats pass, and he told me how proud he was that I had stood up for myself. "You didn't make it about revenge," he said. "You made it about what's right." That was what I wanted more than anything. The necklace sat in its velvet box sometimes, and other times I wore it quietly for special moments. Its value to me was not in the diamonds, but in the promise it represented, that promises could be kept even if late. When people asked about family at social gatherings, I gave short answers. I was no longer interested in explaining my life to those who preferred fantasy over truth. If people asked if I was angry, I would say, "I was hurt. I learned." Then I moved on. People respected that. My life was fuller than any of their criticisms. Work continued to thrive, and I used my position to champion fair practices at my company. For the first time, I felt a sense of control that didn't depend on someone's approval. Yet the story came back again in small ways. Old relatives would sometimes send awkward birthday notes, or distant cousins would comment on my social media. There was a way to spot the people who had been loyal and the ones who had chosen to look away. I no longer wasted energy on those who had already shown their colors. Instead, I invested time in people who made me feel seen. At one point, Claire texted me a photo of Mom buying copies of the business magazine that featured me, 3 copies, she said. I couldn't help a small smile. I wasn't doing this to make my parents jealous. I was building a life that was peaceful and honest. The magazine feature was proof that I had built something that mattered. It wasn't a trophy. It was a new beginning. The final move I made was not dramatic or loud. I didn't get revenge in the movie sense. I never sought to ruin anyone's life. I wanted only what was mine, and to stop giving them power over me. After the necklace returned and the articles ran, a new normal settled in. My parents' social world shifted. They were forced to face how others now looked at them. Sophie's in-laws felt the embarrassment. Nina's friends turned away. The ripple was real. But I didn't savor their downfall. Instead, I took time to build a life that felt good. I continued to invest and expand my holdings. Each rental property brought a new sense of security. I set up a scholarship fund for students studying business because I wanted to help women learn financial independence early. Aaron and I hosted fundraisers and art shows to raise money, and we invited people who cared about change. The idea of legacy shifted in my mind. It wasn't about a necklace or a label. It was about a life that mattered. People started to approach me for speaking events. They wanted to know how I balanced career, investment, and private life. I always said the same thing. Know your worth, keep your proof, and never let someone else decide when you get to be happy. Simple advice, but it came from hard lessons. I mentored young women in my firm, teaching them to save, invest, and negotiate. Watching them find their footing felt better than any applause. Sometimes questions would come. "Do you miss them?" asked a reporter one day. I looked at the camera and said, "I miss what I thought family would be, but I don't miss the part that made me small." The clip ran on a morning show and the responses came in. Women who had been kept in the background now saying they would do things differently. The ripple effect of my choice became something I couldn't have planned, and it felt meaningful. On a quiet anniversary dinner, I put on the necklace. Aaron's eyes softened as he looked at it. "You earned this," he said. I knew he did not mean money. He meant the fights, the nights of quiet planning, the decisions to keep going. I looked at the necklace and thought of Grandma Eleanor's words, and I felt a gentle pride that was not about proving anyone wrong, but about keeping a promise. The story of Sophie's wedding became a cautionary tale in our social circles. Not about public embarrassment, but about private damage. People who valued loyalty and truth began to treat my family differently. The network that used to feed my family's social life now had questions. That change, slow as it was, felt like a correction, but I never rejoiced in it. My life was too busy building another kind of legacy. Time took the edge off the pain. I learned that forgiveness was not always necessary, that sometimes peace is simply choosing not to be present. My parents reached out occasionally, begging for conversations. I let their messages sit. My silence stood for my boundary. I had learned to be content in a life that did not revolve around their acceptance. There were moments when people would ask about Nina, and I would say she was a friend, she made her choice. It was not cruel. It was honest. The world is full of choices like that. We each watch how people respond, then we decide who to keep near. For me, choosing distance was choosing myself. Felt good to be deliberate. Occasionally, Claire would remind me of small private memories. A childhood day at the beach, Grandma Eleanor teaching us to pick out fabric, the way Sophie once shared a secret without thinking. She would say, "It's complicated." I would agree. People are complicated. But the pain remained a teacher. I taught myself to be firm, to document things, to demand what was right. And I encouraged others to do the same. The necklace itself changed from a symbol of greed into a symbol of claim and of promise kept. I found myself telling this story not as a trophy tale, but as a warning. Hold on to what was promised to you. Keep your records and don't let other people write your story for you. That's the real lesson I wanted listeners to hear. Not revenge. Not humiliation. Just justice, calm and clear. Years after the wedding, I can say the hardest thing I ever did was stop asking for permission to be loved. I stopped hoping for a call that would make my chest feel lighter. Instead, I learned to call myself home. I built a life with Aaron that was warm and fair. We had friends who showed up for us and we had work that mattered. The necklace hung sometimes in the jewelry box, sometimes at special dinners. Its value was no longer about the stone but about care. People who had once belonged to my story read about me in magazines and sometimes tried to bridge the gap. My parents attempted to reconnect in small, hesitant notes. I read them, then I let them be. You don't owe the people who hurt you your presence. That was one of the clearest lessons. I let my life move forward. I didn't need to punish them. The natural consequences of their choices played out in their own ways. I learned mercy on my own terms. If one day Sophie or my parents needed me, I might listen, but only if it was real and honest. For now, I had built a home where trust came before tradition, where people showed up when they said they would. I taught my friends and younger colleagues to keep proof and to insist on respect. They thanked me for honesty that saved them from repeats of my story. On quiet nights, I sometimes read letters my grandmother wrote, and I felt her presence. She had wanted the necklace to be a part of my wedding, and she had secured it in her will. She had believed in me then, and that belief had become the gently beating heart of my adult life. Wearing the necklace with Erin in a soft restaurant light felt like honoring her. It felt like finally keeping a promise to someone who had loved me well. The story of my wedding and the days after are not all triumph. There was real, raw sorrow in watching people I loved choose other things. But there was also growth, hard work, and the quiet reclaiming of dignity. If anyone asks me now what freedom looks like, I say it's getting up every morning and choosing small things that protect your peace. For me, that meant protecting a necklace, yes, but it also meant protecting a heart. If you are listening and you have been kept small by people who should protect you, here is what I learned. Keep records, save your proof, build your life slowly, and don't ask permission to be worthy. The rest of it will fall into place. I didn't set out to be an example. I set out to be myself. In the end, that was enough.